guys, they left me in charge of the intro, so I have to do a good job, okay? My name is Simone, and this is Beauty and the Boob Doc Podcast. We talk about plastic surgery, beauty, health, wellness, lifestyle, and so much more. I'm losing breath. We have our very own board-certified plastic surgeon, Dr. Farber, a.k.a. the breast expert, a.k.a. the Boob Doc. And then we have the beauty, which is supposed to be me, and I'm thankful for it. Listen, it's a title I am willing to accept at this time, no questions asked. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. So without further ado, let's get into it. You are what they call high maintenance.
Said no one ever.
I can't. You're like, that is liquor. Just still do that.
Well, I mean, I think this is a perfect place to start, Simone. So,
yeah.
High maintenance, I'm not going to lie, has been said about me in the past.
Yeah, really.
In pretty much all aspects of my life. And I truly believe that it is a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
I think that the reason I am, if I do say so myself, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but the reason I'm really good at what I do,
you have to be,
is because I am extremely high maintenance. Nurses have said to me in the past that at least understand the concepts are the more high maintenance you are, the better the surgeon you are. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. Mm-hmm. I just can't say ever it's good enough.
Right.
And I think that's...
Specifically, plastic surgeon, like when the objective is achieving aesthetic result, like prime aesthetic result, you have to be very to the...
Everything.
To the
meticulous,
detail.
to the detail, to everything.
Is there an off switch, though? Like... that we need.
I mean, no. Unfortunately, or fortunately, both. It's ingrained. It's not something you can teach. So that kind of level of precision and meticulousness is not something that you can teach. And I think that it is an innate quality that I possess that just allows me to be absolutely...
But you were born with that. Like,
yes.
I feel like you were born with a lab coat and, like, you always knew you wanted to do this.
You know, it's interesting. So, I have not always known I want to be a plastic surgeon.
Okay. I feel like I know this story, but for everybody else listening,
should I say
we'll
it?
Hear it again. Yeah,
okay.
I want to hear it. I want to hear the story.
We'll go from the top. So, basically, as everyone knows, I'm a fourth-generation surgeon, and I'm the first in my family to be a plastic surgeon. And so, yes, growing up, I didn't necessarily know I wanted to be a surgeon or a plastic surgeon. I knew I wanted to be a doctor because you don't really know what's going on when you're younger. But just seeing in my family and sitting around the dinner table and, you know, being exposed to what it meant to be a healer. You know, I used to go on rounds with my dad and on the weekends and, you know, when you're young, you just sit in the nurse's station and color. But, you know, as you get older, you realize you just see the look in patients' eyes after, you know, with just sheer gratitude of thank you for helping me. And that kind of reward in life is what I was looking for. Success is measured in different ways, and the success that I was looking for was to help people and to help them in a way that it was real. And so I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and so you kind of get to looking at the different medical specialties. As I progressed in life, I realized I wanted to be a surgeon. Why? Because it seemed fun. I've always been coordinated and good with my hands, and it just seemed that rather than mentally masturbating, as we call it, you know, you actually do stuff, and you get your hands dirty, and you heal with steel, as, you know, to get all cliche. But so as you say, okay, I want to be a surgeon, and I'm witnessing, when I got into medical school, I did a couple of rotations in vascular surgery, which is what my father was, and heart surgery, and I really thought I was going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, so a heart surgeon. Because when you're looking at the different specialties in surgery, to me, and what I used to talk to my residents about was it's a specific coordinated skill set. So orthopedic surgery, for example, is like big gardening, hammering, sawing, you know, big, strong work. Clearly that is not me. The next on the opposite scale is kind of microsurgery. So neurosurgery, spine surgery, even fields of plastic surgery where you're doing very meticulous microsurgery under the microscope. That is more wrist work, and that wasn't really what I was about either. So I define plastic surgery, vascular surgery, cardiothoracic surgery, facial, surgery as a scooping motion. So like this kind of motion, and that's where I felt that I was most coordinated. So that's kind of how I got into the overall realm of plastic surgery, vascular surgery, cardiothoracic surgery. And I really thought I was going to be a heart surgeon. But then I started looking when I got seriously deep into the process, and I was looking at the patients. And generally, the surgeries were really cool, but the patients were overall a more sick population. People were dying. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that in my life every day. I felt like that would not be a good fit for me.
That's fair.
So in looking, I thought that plastic surgery, it kind of fell into my lap and seemed like the obvious choice for me, in the sense that it was a combination of artistry and science, and I always had a keen eye for beauty. Mm-hmm. I've always had an eye for what looked good. And I would try and describe this to friends and family about, I don't know, it just came very easy to me. Where it was like, clearly that looks good. Clearly it doesn't.
Not easy, but natural.
Very
like
natural.
Instinctual.
Yeah. 100%.
Wow.
And other people would just, look at something, or if I see, an outfit they're wearing, or just design in terms of house or decor or whatever, I don't know. To me, it was just came very natural to see what looked good. And so the other thing that, combines with that is symmetry. Mm-hmm. For me, and again, it goes to kind of what we were talking about before in terms of being the particularness of everything, is, I don't know, if it's not perfectly symmetric, I see it. Like, it's glaring to me.
Yeah, and for reference, we were trying to set up the cameras prior to this episode, and you have Dr. Farber over there, like, making it absolutely perfect. And I'm like, Dr. Farber, it's good enough. It's good enough. Let's just go. Let's get recording. And you're like, no, wait. And sitting there trying to make it perfect. And it looks great, but
and I think that and I don't know if it would take someone a lot longer to do what I did. Like, it took what? 4 minutes, 5 minutes?
People maybe just don't have the patience.
And I think that's what it is. So when I'm in surgery and I'm doing like a breast surgery where symmetry is really critical. Right. So I always say, if women had one breast, my job would be so easy, because I can make one breast look really pretty. Right. The hard part, or one of the hard parts, or the most challenging part, is making them look the same or as similar. So the symmetry component, and for me, if it's not perfect, it's not right. Mm-hmm. And so in surgery, nurses and scrubs have always said that where most people would stop. Yeah. So we have a great result, pretty result, everything looks great. Most surgeons would say, okay, it's good enough, let's go. Mm-hmm. I'll take another hour just to get, rather than a 94%, I'm going for a 98, 99%, A+ every single time. And I think that's the difference. That's why surgeries take longer with me. That meticulousness is what takes a good result and makes it a world-class result.
That's awesome. So that was the natural part of you, that you had that eye. And then when you were going through the whole process of becoming a doctor, towards the end is when you have to pick your specialty. I don't know the process, but I know it's like 8, 9, 10 years, right?
So you go to college, obviously, take all your prereqs, and that's the first kind of selection process, where you got to take all your prerequisites for medical school: biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physiology, all the stuff, calculus. And usually they're all 8 o'clock classes in the morning. And so that weeds out a whole bunch of people who don't want to get up early. So your first freshman year big basic science classes, I went to Tufts, these were like 500-person classes, 8 in the morning, and they made sure it was on a Friday morning. And they really wanted to get people out that just didn't want to be there, because being a doctor is tough, but the process of becoming a doctor is very tough.
Right. I like the fact that they made it so it was like, we want to see your dedication.
Yeah, because
you want to be this person, let's see you act like that person before you're that person.
It's more that as you get further along in the process, it's going to get harder and harder. And if you can't hack or have the desire to put in the time to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, then don't bother.
Right.
So you take all your classes, your freshman year classes, you get good grades, you show up in Friday mornings, you get fine. So then you have to take your MCATs, was the whole thing. So everyone took SATs, and MCATs are monster tests.
Wow.
I can't remember, maybe 8 hours, long hours, lots of studying, really hard. Fine. Then you get a good enough grade, you apply to medical school, and we got into med school.
Okay.
So we got into med school, you're going to med school, you're happy if you're in the country at the time, that was the goal, just get in the country, go to medical school, because once you are in medical school, then you're going to become a doctor. Prior to getting into medical school, there was no guarantee that you were going to become a doctor.
And you already put in all that work.
So you had to put all that work, and you're like, if I don't get in, I don't get in. Fine. So we got into medical school, going to med school. I went to GW, George Washington, D.C., which was a great experience. In medical school, the first 2 years of medical school are classwork. So your first year is all the organic chemistry and microbiology and biochemistry, and I remember this so vividly. Biochemistry, at least at my school, was like another weed out selection process. So you're in med school, you've now gone through all this stuff, and there's another weed out where, I remember this so vividly, you had to get a 80% on your first test. Wow. If you did not get an 80%, you are out. 80% first biochem test, or else you're out. I remember and they gave us the first test. You took the test, next whatever, they gave it back. They would give you a little piece of folded up paper. This is when we had paper, you didn't get grades online or anything.
Oh, okay.
So they gave you a folded up piece of paper with your grade.
Oh my gosh.
And so everyone's opening it up. There were kids crying.
No.
I was like, I took the paper, left.
Really?
Didn't look at it.
Oh, really?
Didn't look at it.
Okay, wow.
So I took the paper and left, and I remember walking out of the school, walking down the block, sitting on a bench with the piece of paper, looked at it. I remember getting an 88.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, we're here to stay. Now we get to actually do this.
Fantastic. What'd you do immediately after, real quick?
I gave it a little fist bump.
Yeah, you were just like, yes, okay, all right, right on, let's go.
I'll tell you, so everyone can look this up. You should Google this. We should put this somehow where we show it.
I could do that.
There was a show, ER.
I've heard of it.
All right, so ER, it's where George Clooney was actually like a young, handsome doctor, right? So that's the time frame. So I graduated medical school in 2003. It's 2025. So this is like, 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And in the opening credits or opening whatever of the show, they did this thing, and one of the doctors gets out of surgery, and they have this, and gives himself like a big fist pump that only, a doc could know after a successful surgery, where you like take your gown off, you saved someone's life, you did an amazing procedure, and you get out there and you have no one but yourself to just with your thoughts. You know what you did.
No one understands that win.
No one understands that win.
So it's like, okay, all right.
It's a very individual win.
Yeah.
And so there's this scene where he, does this thing, and that from then to now still, when I get that individual win, I think about that. Anyway.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
All right.
Pass this test.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, I really want to know. This is the story.
So you have your first 2 years, you do your classwork, then your third and fourth year are clinical rotation. So you're no longer in the classroom. So you've already taken anatomy, so you know the body, you already know all the medical stuff, you have volumes and volumes of stuff, but you haven't really touched a patient yet.
Right.
And so one of the funny stories I also always tell is I did a lot of studying in the library. Okay. So these classes, you go to class, but it's only, 45 minutes, but then you spend the majority of the time studying on your own. And there's these huge words that come from Latin, and, you don't really know what they are.
I still don't know how to say
so many long letters, words. And so I would learn all this stuff, and sometimes I would, learn the word with the letter out of place or something. Okay. You've never heard it said before, except for that one time in class. So then you get to the floors, like in the hospital, and you say something that you think you remembered or learned, and it's so wrong and not pronounced, and everyone looks at you like, what did
because
you
read it instead of hearing it.
Correct.
So
fine. So third year you take your...
so do you have a story about a word? Did that stuck with you that you mispronounced so bad?
The whole concept, so it's the Socratic method of teaching. Okay, so what does that mean? So Socrates, the philosopher, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato.
Yes.
The Socratic method is basically where you can imagine in ancient times, you'd have all these philosophy students of these major philosophers. They would stand in a line and just get drilled with questions. What is the meaning of this? What do you think of this? Da, da, da.
Right.
And so in medical school, they're big into this, or at least my school was very kind of malignant in the sense that they really were in your face and taught by the fear of not knowing. So when you're sitting in a line with your peers and your classmates and the teacher fires off a question at you in an auditorium and they just go down the row, what is this? What is it? If you don't know it, you kind of feel it's not a good feeling.
Right.
I don't think that would fly today.
Perhaps.
Maybe.
But so what? You were in this line and...
So in this line, I would say something, and then you get the classical, you say it wrong, and then like, what?
Oh, no.
And then everyone kind of laughs,
Yeah.
Then you learn everything.
Fair enough.
All right, fine. So third and fourth year, you're on the floors. Third year, you're doing your basic, surgery, OBGYN, medicine, psychiatry, the whole thing. And then fourth year, you do electives. So then you do your acting internships where you actually are pretending like you're an intern, and you do it in the fields that you're interested in. So I did plastic surgery. I actually did a rotation in vascular surgery with my father, which was cool to actually, it was the first time I actually was across the table from my father operating, which was amazing.
Is that iconic photo on your Instagram?
That is the photo.
Is it?
That is, and it was interesting because we set it up, and my grandfather, who was a general surgeon, he wasn't practicing anymore, but he came in and scrubbed with us too. I actually got to be across the table in the same operating room with my father and my grandfather.
That's amazing.
That was a special thing. That was a special day for sure. And they were playing CDs. My father used to carry around. Now we just play MP3s on our phones.
Yeah.
MP3s, is that a thing?
No, like Spotify, Apple Music, but okay. I'll let you say it.
MP3s was like the most advanced thing back then.
MP3 is like early 2000. Oh my gosh.
MP3s.
No, now it's Bluetooth.
I remember when I was an intern, what was Napster? Do you know what Napster is? Okay, so Napster was, and it was in the movie, the Facebook movie about Zuckerberg?
I didn't watch it, but yeah.
God, someone.
Is it before 2000?
Oh my God. So there was a movie about Facebook and how Facebook started, and they mentioned, Napster. Napster was this website you could illegally download MP3s. But the connections were so slow that I would leave my computer running all day long. So I would queue up. I would spend hours queuing up my computer. Yeah. And I would before this, you had to buy a $15 CD. And at the time, this was expensive.
Yeah.
And you only wanted like 1 or 2 or 3 songs on an album. So now you could go onto Napster, queue up thousands of songs that you ordinarily would have to pay for, and click a button, let it run all day. You come home, and that's how you developed your music library. But it was at the time where these artists were we're getting paid for our albums. Now Napster's here, and they're giving all this music away, which we're still dealing with now.
Yeah.
But it did. So that was a whole...
Did you play music in the operating room with your grandfather and your father?
So he played Motown.
Okay.
So like Diana Ross, The Temptations, all like the old town, Motown.
Oh, I love that.
So
you did your electives, you did cardio, you had that experience, which is great.
So now it gets stressful, Simone. So high school you graduate, then 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm probably 27 years old. No. So graduate college like 21, 4 years of med school, so 25.
25, okay.
So 25 years old. Then... your last year of medical school, you have to decide, number one, what specialty you want, but number two, where you want to do your residency. So your residency is your specialty training in that field. Different lengths of time for different specialties. So internal medicine's 3 years, whereas general surgery is 5 years, whereas plastic surgery typically is 6 years or longer. So sometimes you have to do all general surgery and then do a fellowship in plastic surgery. Fine. But not only that, you have to figure out where you want to go. And so there's only, in the particular plastic surgery programs that I was looking at, they were called combined programs. So generally you did 3 years of general surgery and 3 years of plastic surgery. as opposed to the traditional way of doing an entire general surgery residency for 5 years and then a 3-year fellowship.
Oh, wow.
So it was a combined, integrated approach to shave off some time, but not on it for your plastic surgery, but doing stuff that wasn't necessarily relevant to your specialty.
Right.
It was very highly selective, not a lot of spots in the country, so there were only like 100 spots for maybe 4,000 or 5,000 applicants. And each school or program had only like 2 spots per thing.
Highly competitive.
Highly competitive. So you go around interviewing to all these places. And the interviews are just basically spending time in the operating room and meeting the other residents and attendings, etc. So then there's the match. Have you heard of the match? You know what the match is?
I could imagine.
So you can't, because
Really?
the match is crazy.
You're like, no.
So what you do in the match is you put your top 10, 20 programs in order that you want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
The schools all put their ranking of people that they want in their program in order that they want them. They throw all of this into a computer, and it spits out where you will be spending the next 6 years of your life.
Like where it matched.
Where it matched.
Wow.
And the match kind of works, but like you could end up in the middle of nowhere doing something you don't want to do. So it's nuts.
Yeah, that is interesting. That kind of reminds me of, because I dated a guy who went into the Air Force, and it was kind of similar.
Yes,
like,
that is
he
similar.
Picked places he wanted to get stationed, and then they put him
Somewhere.
He was like Florida,
Right.
California, Hawaii, and it was Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Exactly. For a long time, but in there, you're only there for a couple years.
Yeah, and then you could switch, obviously.
So this was 6 years.
Wow.
A long time. So I was in the same auditorium with the biochemistry little piece of paper.
Okay, wow.
And they give you an envelope where you're going to match with all the other kids. Took my envelope again, went to my same bench that we went biochemistry 4 years later, opened up the envelope, saw my top choice in plastic surgery.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was like, okay, now we're next step.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I ended up going to Michigan. It was Michigan State in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I didn't really know where Grand Rapids was. I was like, where is this?
You're just like, this looks cool. This is a
No,
good school.
it didn't. No. There's a lot more. They actually did like the third most breast augmentations of anywhere in the country at the time, and they, were doing a lot of good breast work, and they were famous breast surgeons there. But I really hadn't heard of the city Grand Rapids before. Sorry if anyone is upset with that, but
I didn't know about it until I met you.
But I found, exactly. But I found out they had the most golf courses per person of anywhere in the country also. So it was like, how bad could this place be? So we ended up going there, and it was the best thing that ever happened. I ended up getting the training, world-class training in plastic surgery. And then, so that's all stressful. You're learning how to become a surgeon. So that's 6 years. So now we did 4 years of medical school, 6 years of plastic surgery training. And then I went to NYU to do a cosmetic surgery or aesthetic surgery fellowship at NYU with some of the rock stars of plastic surgery. And then we came down to Florida.
That's awesome.
So that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that is a whole process, and that's real. That really happened.
And so so I think I was 33. You get paid a little bit as a resident, but I was 33 when I got my first job. And it was stressful. What was interesting about the whole experience was I missed my 20s.
Yeah.
So everyone was moving to New York City, and everyone was getting their jobs in New York City and having roommates in New York and going and hanging out and living their best life. I did not do any of that. Zero. And so that was the discipline, similarly to kind of getting up at 8 o'clock on a Friday. It was the same kind of thing, where if I wasn't prepared to get up at Friday morning at 8 o'clock, I wouldn't have been able to kind of keep on going. But you know what? Anything that has merit or that is interesting or is going to positively reward you is difficult. You have to put effort in. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right. Outside your comfort zone, worth it. Yeah, fair enough. And then you came back to Boca, I guess, because
I was a Florida boy my whole life. I knew that I wanted to come back home. The beach and the sun and the sand and the salt is
Michigan was nice. Where was Tufts?
Tufts in Boston. So I went Boston for college and DC in med school.
New York, and all these places, and you're like, home.
Well, I wanted to confirm the fact that I wanted to come home. I knew I was coming home, so I wanted to experience the cold. I wanted to experience the Northeast, the Midwest. I wanted to see all the other stuff just to kind of enrich my life, enrich my experiences, knowing I was going to come home.
Right. I agree with you. I'm Florida, so all day long. So I'm glad that you went here and I found you. But this practice itself here in Boca Raton is, what do we do? Like, let's just get to that point. Because we're a plastic surgery office, but when people think plastic surgery, there's obviously rhinoplasties or nose jobs, there's facelifts, there's breast, there's body, there's so much. I mean, it's people, I feel like when you think plastic surgery, you think of like the Kardashians and Botox.
Correct.
But there's so much to it. And is it better to specialize in one thing and 5 things, to do it all? Like, why did you choose what you chose?
I think one of the intrigue about plastic surgery for me was that it was head to toe, right? So plastic surgery, unlike a lot of other specialties, truly spans the entire body. Mm-hmm. And when you're in training, you have to become the most well-rounded plastic surgeon you can be. So you have to know and be well-versed in everything. So whether that's skin cancer reconstructions of the face, whether it's trauma reconstructions of the lower extremity, whether that's breast reconstruction for breast cancer. When I was going through training, cosmetic surgery was a little bit more taboo. It was a little bit more hush-hush. It was a little more secretive. It was really confined to plastic surgeons. Now there's a lot more specialties getting involved in aesthetic medicine. And so no one came out of practice as an aesthetic surgeon. I did an aesthetic fellowship. One of the reasons was because the initial training didn't really incorporate a lot of cosmetic surgery. One of the reasons I went to the program I went to is because the aesthetic training they had, it was more of a aesthetic heavy program as opposed to some of the other academic centers that were a lot more reconstructive. So when I first came out, I was doing a lot of everything. I was doing a lot of reconstruction. I was doing a lot of cosmetics. I was doing a lot of face. I was doing a lot of body, which made me the plastic surgeon that I am. Because you can't just, or you shouldn't just go to one thing, because then you really don't know how to do anything else, number one. But every little component of everything I've ever done has made me the surgeon that I am today.
It gives you the knowledge,
the experience, the knowledge, the technical expertise, etc. Exactly. So as my practice has evolved, I now do predominantly all aesthetic medicine, predominantly breast and body at this point.
Right. Hence the Boob Doc.
Hence the Boob Doc. And hence the beauty, Simone.
Right. Thank you.
You are the beauty. I am the Boob Doc. Yeah. And that is how we like it.
I love it. I love it. I love that it went, when you started, it was like, okay, gain your experience, gain the knowledge, know a little bit of everything. And then it narrowed down into what is today. And I mean, you're able to perfect the specifics.
Correct. It's like, I always use the analogy, the Olympics were just up here. You cannot be the best sprinter and the best marathoner. It's impossible. Why? Because in order to be the best at something, you have to do more of it than anyone else. Mm-hmm. You have to devote your craft to that specialty. Mm-hmm. So if you're working on explosive movements of sprinting all the time to build up your muscles, to work on your aerobic training, etc., you cannot devote that time to being the best marathoner. And so you can choose to be kind of a cross trainer. You can be a pretty good marathon runner and a pretty good sprinter, but there's someone else that is devoting all their time to sprinting or all their time to marathon running. Fair. And so I look at it as that, where, when I first started practice or later on in my career, I was doing the same 5 operations. I was doing facelifts, I was doing breast augmentation, breast lift, breast reduction, and then tummy tuck and liposuction, body contouring. And I was doing just that. And then as I realized this concept where I really wanted to be world class and I really wanted to be, talked about as the best, I had to really focus and narrow my scope. They have an expression, you have to log 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. And so you don't have enough time in the day to log 10,000 hours at a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to be an expert in something, you have to devote the time to that something.
We're going to stop right there. Thank you so much for tuning in to our first ever episode, part 1. Check us out next week for part 2. Wait, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your peeps and follow us on social media at Beauty and the Boob Doc and at Farber Plastic Surgery. Okay, you're free to go now. Thanks again. Bye for now.